What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Legitical Response. We cover political news, keep you up to date, and keep you informed with everything that the government does, or at least I try to keep you up to date with everything that the government does, but by God, they do so much stuff, I can't hardly keep up. I'm trying. I'm doing my best, y'all. So, what's up, everybody? How the hell's your day going, by the way? Hope y'all having a pretty good day. Yeah, we getting into some stuff today. Yeah, it was a slow news day over the weekend. Yeah, we talked about this whole Easter Sunday thing and the trans day of visibility or whatever. Yeah, and as I predicted, Republicans came out. Some Republican pundits came out and was like, oh, Joe Biden is blah, 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 he's evil for them. And so I'm like, come on, dude, shut up. We know Joe Biden is not a Christian. He claims to be Catholic, but we know he can't be. You cannot be a good, upstanding Christian person and agree with abortion. Agree with transing your kids. You can't agree with drag queen story hour and all this other stuff that Joe Biden does. Warmongering, sending money to Ukraine. You know, why would you want to ag on a war? I don't get that. So we know he's not that. So why are you griping about it? It's a line of attack that just makes you look kind of bad, in my opinion. Yeah, I understand. Easter is a day of celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Yes, it's a very sacred day, but these Republicans also need to understand that not everybody's a Christian, right? So they're not going to give a damn either way, especially people that are in the quote-unquote trans community. But, you know, I'm not trying to harp on that. I harped on it yesterday. It's just, I saw some of the videos from some of these pundits, and I'm like, come on, dude. Come on, y'all need to chill the hell out. So, but let's get into what we're talking about today, right? Let's get into it right quick, y'all. Check this out. States move to shore up voting rights protections after courts erode federal safeguards. Now, you hear that headline, you're like, oh my God, what? Why would they want to erode federal safeguards? Well, you know, this story comes from the mainstream narrative machine, and we know that the mainstream narrative machine loves to lie. They love to twist facts around, and oh my God, yes, they are. They're constantly twisting facts around. So let's go ahead and get into this story right quick because, you know, from the headline from AP News, you know, supposedly unbiased. No, they're really biased. They're left-leaning very hard, but yeah, let's get into it. An appeals court ruling that weakened a key part of the Voting Rights Act is spurring lawmakers in several states to enact state-level protections to plug gaps that the ruling opened in the landmark federal law aimed at prohibiting racial discrimination in voting. Right. So, oh my God, racial discrimination in voting. I wonder what that could mean. Yeah, these were protections that were put in place, you know, during the civil rights era of the United States because there was a lot of discrimination back then. Now, since then, we've come a long ways as far as racial discrimination. It's pretty much gone. You still hear people harping about it all the time, but like I always say, you know, show me something that I can do that anybody else in America can't do, right? As far as institutional restrictions, laws, all that good stuff. Show me something, right? And as a matter of fact, it's a little bit skewed in the minority direction, if you ask me. So there's no real need for that anymore since there is no more racial discrimination. Institutional racial discrimination. I'll say that because we still have evil people out there. We still have a lot of Democrats who act racist as hell and want to put people in boxes, try to play identity politics and all this other stuff. You know, one day, I swear, one day this country will get to the point, and hopefully it spreads to the entire world, but good luck, that one day we'll get to the point to where people won't say, oh, well, this black person over here did this, or this white person over here did this. We'll just say, yeah, this person did that. This person is about to go do this. And, you know, instead of throwing skin color, like, what's the big deal with this? I never understood it myself. Why does the news report a black man robbed a store or a white guy's a serial killer? You know, it's like, why? Why throw that in there? Why throw that extra little bit in there that you really don't have to? Never understood that, but that's not what we're talking about. Let's get into it. Democratic-led states have been taking matters into their own hands because national legislation to expand voting rights remains stalled in a divided Congress. Meanwhile, Republican lawmakers in many states have tried to erode safeguards in the name of protecting election integrity amid the former President Donald Trump's false claims that vote fraud cost him the 2020 election. Now, what they're talking about, right? The Republicans trying to erode safeguards. Wonder what that could mean. Eroding safeguards. Let's see. How about trying to enact voter ID with voter registration? Yeah, so we can make sure that citizens are voting in these elections. And let's see. They're trying to get rid of ballot harvesting, which is a very, very underhanded way of going about electing people, because basically what ballot harvesting does is you get a bunch of activists, right? And it's Democrat activists, by the way, because Republican activists don't really do this. They're just now starting to catch on to doing this because it's legal in some places and it's illegal in other places. But basically, you get an activist and they'll go around and they'll knock on doors. Hey, have you voted yet? Have you got your mail-in ballot yet? Oh, you haven't? Well, take a few seconds and fill it out and we'll put it in the mail for you. And some people that normally wouldn't vote, these people go and say, yeah, you need to vote this way, this way, this way. They do whatever they can to get as many votes as possible. That is how Joe Biden got 81 million votes. That's the only reason he got 81 million votes, because of ballot harvesting, mail-in ballots, and absentee ballots. Now, a lot of people say, oh, it was the most secure election ever. No, it wasn't. There was a lot of fraud. Was it enough to overturn that election? I can't say. I don't know. The evidence says no. Says there wasn't enough fraud. However, some of that evidence wasn't even looked at. All those court cases that Trump brought, most of them were turned away on standing. The Supreme Court would not even look at Texas v. Pennsylvania. Now, I could sit here forever and harp on this. If you don't know what Texas v. Pennsylvania is, I would suggest go look it up, because, yeah, the Supreme Court needs to make that decision, to be honest with you. It basically says that, a state, Pennsylvania, changed their voting rules and laws without the consent of the state legislature. And Texas said, no, you can't do this. This is wrong. It has to go through the proper process. The state legislature has to decide to change this. You can't just do that. And it was a big old fight. But yeah, Democrats are ballot harvesting. It's basically cheating. You want to get out right, it's cheating, because you go to somebody's house that normally would not vote and you get them to vote. And then you sway them to vote in a certain way. They say, oh, no, we're not doing that. But yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. But let's keep going. Legislators in Minnesota, Michigan, Maryland, New Jersey, and Florida are pursuing State Voting Rights Act, building on ones enacted by New York in 2022 and Connecticut in 2023, as well as ones enacted earlier in Virginia, Oregon, Washington, and California. And we know of interest from other states that are considering taking up state VRAs in the next year or so, said Michael Pernick, an attorney for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in New York. In Minnesota, Democratic Rep. Emma Greenman of Minneapolis said she felt an urgent need to act after the 8th U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals ruled last year in an Arkansas case that voters and groups could no longer sue under Section 2 of the Federal Voting Rights Act. Only the U.S. Attorney General. Section 2 prohibits voting practices or procedures that discriminate on the basis of race, including maps that disadvantage voters of color. Lawsuits have long been brought under the section to try to ensure black voters have an adequate political representation in places with a long history of racism, including many southern states. But we've come to find out that, yeah, there's a lot more racism up in the north than there is down in the south. You talk to a lot of black folks. I talk to a lot of black folks all the time. The black folks that have came from up north and say that people are a lot more racist up north than they are down here. But, I'm not trying to squabble over minutia. But, like I said in the intro, where's the discrimination these days? Show me some discrimination and I might change my mind on this.
right? Like, you don't see discrimination. How can they discriminate against black voters, as a matter of fact? These days, I understand they could have done it back then. Things were a lot different back then. But we've changed. We've changed for the better. America is no longer a racist country. Sure, there is people that are still racist. There's a lot of people, minorities that are racist as hell and get away with it. They're coming out writing books like Anti-White and The White Fragility and all this other stuff, basically calling white people demons and evil and all this other stuff just for being white, just because our ancestors enslaved Africans way back in the day. But what they fail to tell you is that every single race on this planet, every race, every single ethnicity has been enslaved at one point or another. If you want to argue about this, we could say that the Israelites, right, like Jewish people, are probably the most oppressed people in all of history. There's an argument to be had for that, right? But, if there is no longer discrimination on the basis of race, why have these laws in place? Why? Oh, because it helps the Democrats. Because they consider voter ID laws to discriminate on the basis of race. Huh? What do you mean by that? How the hell can a voter ID law discriminate on the basis of race? Yeah, that's what these people come out and they will say that, oh, well, black people don't have the opportunity to go get an ID. But you go and talk to any black person, any minority, and they'll say, yeah, I got an ID. Everybody, you have to have an ID. And you do have to have an ID. Most states require you to have a state ID. And a lot of those states will pay for that ID. So what are you talking about? How is that discriminatory? It's not. But they want to scream and cry and yell about it. We went over a lot of this back in 2020. They come out and saying, oh, well, they don't have access to the internet, so they can't register. Huh? Yeah, that's discriminatory. To think that somebody in this day and age doesn't have access to the internet when there's free Wi-Fi all over the damn place. You can go just about anywhere and get free Wi-Fi. What do you mean don't have access to the internet? Get out of here with that BS. Yeah, they want to skew stuff and change these laws to help themselves stay in power. And then they say, oh, well, it's to preserve democracy. Let's keep going. The appeals court decision currently applies only to the 7 states in the 8th Circuit, which stretches from Minnesota to Arkansas. Legal observers expect the case to end up before the U.S. Supreme Court. As with other states of policy, what you're seeing is states really have to say, we need to make sure that we have a system that is free from discrimination. We need to protect the rights of voters, Greenham said. And they do. The 1965 Voting Rights Act is seen as a crowning achievement of the civil rights movement, but federal courts have chipped away at it over the decades, said Leda Knott, an attorney for the Campaign Legal Center in Washington, D.C., who testifies for the Minnesota bill. Right? How? They don't explain how. The biggest blow to the federal law, in the view of the voting rights advocates, in their view, was the 2013 Supreme Court ruling in an Alabama case that stripped the government of a potential tool to stop voting bias by eliminating the requirement that jurisdictions with a history of racial discrimination in voting get pre-clearance from the federal government for major changes in the way they hold elections. So, in other words, they wanted to change the laws to get rid of voter IDs. Well, you have to get pre-clearance to do that. Yeah, that is actually, you're chipping away at the integrity of that election by doing that. You know that, right? Yeah, no, these people don't care. They think you don't have to have an ID. I wonder why. Why would they not want people to have an ID? They say, oh, they can't get an ID. No, that's just an excuse. You know what it is? Yeah, they want criminal aliens to be able to vote. Yeah, they've passed laws in a lot of these extremely progressive places that have been struck down by the courts time and time again, trying to allow criminal aliens to vote in elections. There you go. Hey, I wonder why Joe Biden has this big old open door policy, huh? Allowing 10 to 15 million criminal aliens to come into this country. Oh, why are they giving them hotel rooms? I wonder why they're doing this and not helping their own people. Huh, I wonder why they're giving them debit cards with thousands of freaking dollars on it. Oh, maybe it's because they can get these people to vote for them so they can stay in power, so they can keep their democracy. That's what it is. Now, of course, they're not going to come out and tell you what it is, but where's the other, where's the reasoning behind this? You say it's to protect voting rights because IDs are obviously discriminatory. Yeah, you can shove that right up your damn can, if you ask me. Conservatives have argued that the requirement did not account for racial progress and other changes in society, and that existing voting rights protections are adequate. It looks like an effort by the left in the state to do at the same level what they can't do at the federal level under the VRA, said Zach Smith, a legal fellow at the Conservative Heritage Foundation's Edwin Meese Third Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. The Eighth Circuit decision sounded new alarms because most lawsuits to enforce the act have come from private individuals and groups, not the Justice Department, Knott said. Administrations change, so allowing people to protect their own voting rights is a valuable enforcement mechanism, she said. Yeah, and guess what? They still have the right to do that. You have to bring it to your Attorney General. There are broad similarities among the various state voting rights act under consideration and the New York and Connecticut laws. They all give voters and groups a private right of action to challenge laws that dilute or suppress the votes of people of color, Pernick said. That's the right the Eighth Circuit struck down on the federal level. Right. And like I said, show me something. Show me anything that could possibly discriminate against a minority. Not criminal aliens, right? They can't show anything whatsoever because there is nothing there. They want criminal aliens to be able to vote in these elections, and I don't like that. I don't think people that are not even supposed to be in this country should be voting in our elections to decide what laws that I have to follow, right? These people break the law to come in, and then you're going to give them the right to vote so that laws can be created that I have to abide by, but they don't. Yeah, once again, you can shove that right up your can. But this also comes back to something that I talk about a lot, states' rights. I don't like the federal government whatsoever. I don't think the federal government should have nearly as much power as the federal government does, right? That's one of the greatest things about this country is the Great Experiment. We're a collection of states, right? If you don't like the laws in one state, you move to another state. That's why this country works, because states have the individual rights to make up laws that adhere to what their constituency wants. So you're going to have vastly different laws from state to state. That's how this country is supposed to run. Now, the federal government comes in and say, oh, well, we need to protect all of these things, right? So we have like the Bill of Rights. The federal government says states cannot pass laws that violate the U.S. Constitution. That's a given. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I don't see any problem with the federal government enforcing the Constitution. But do they do that? No, they don't do that. They're allowing millions of criminal aliens to come in this country. They're trying to get them to vote in these elections. They're changing all these laws and changing up rules and making up ballot harvesting to try to cheat to keep their democracy, right? No, that's not democracy, by the way. If somebody does not want to vote, you don't have one of your activists go to their freaking house to try to force them into voting. That's BS. That's wrong, in my opinion. Well, you might say, oh, well, it might help older people that can't get out and go. Well, we have mail-in voting, but there's a big problem with mail-in voting, too, right? The drop boxes and all this other stuff. But, I mean, that's something that, we can work all those problems out, I believe. Ballot harvesting, to me, should be illegal everywhere, but, once again, the states have control over their own elections. The federal government should not be allowed to regulate elections on a state level. I don't think that's right. But should states be allowed to do certain things? Yeah, it's a tough one. Y'all let me know down in the comments what y'all think. Should the states have full autonomy over their elections? Or should the federal government step in when it comes to federal elections, like Senate, congressmen, and the president and all that stuff? Should the federal government have a certain set of rules that every state has to abide by? Let me know what you think down in the comments. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.